Hey third graders, it's Miss Williamson here. Today we're going to continue to talk about adaptations. And adaptations are a behavior or a body part that helps a living thing survive in its environment. So that means adaptations are these things that help animals. They're beneficial. They're good for the animal. So some animals and plants have adaptations, but they don't have all of them. Um, an example is mimicry. Some animals mimic other animals. Think about a snake that mimics or looks like a poisonous snake. He gets avoided. He avoids getting eaten. Camouflage is another example of an adaptation where you blend in with your habitat or your environment, and then you avoid getting eaten that way too. Plants in our swamp habitat in Georgia adapted to eat insects because they don't have any soil to get their nutrients from. Remember, those plants in the swamp habitat in Georgia, they live in water. Our final example is hibernation. That's when animals, they take a really long nap in the wintertime to conserve energy. So today we're going to learn about a different adaptation. And we're going to start out by looking at a few pictures and asking some questions about these pictures. So how are these pictures similar and different? Well, I see three pictures and they all have people in them. And they're all carrying luggage or their belongings. And it looks like they're trying to get somewhere else. So they're either going by airplane or boat, or they're simply walking to get to a different place. This kind of reminds me of immigration, where people are going from one place to another for certain reasons. Has your family ever immigrated, or have your do you know somebody who's an immigrant? These pictures are of animals, and it kind of reminds me of the last ones we just looked at. They're all trying to get somewhere else. They're all in groups, and I know I've seen birds fly like that, but I wonder where they're going and why they want to go there. I see in the bottom right-hand corner, there's some butterflies. And it looks like they're trying to go from Canada and America down south to Mexico. I wonder why. What's the point? So these people that we just looked at in the pictures and animals, they have adapted to their environments by migrating to different places. So migration is our new adaptation, and migration is the process of moving from one habitat to another. So imagine that an animal in our mountain region in Georgia migrated down to Mexico. But why? Why would it do that? And what types of animals migrate? I have a lot of questions. So why do animals migrate? Well, one reason is to survive winter and cold weather. Animals can't just put on coats like we do in the wintertime when it gets really cold. Another reason is they might need to have babies in a different environment, an environment that's less cold. Another reason would be to find food. In the wintertime, there's not a lot of food around, so maybe some animals have to move to a different place to find their food. Another question I have is, how do animals migrate? How do they know where to go, and why do they go where they go? Well, scientists are not sure how animals migrate. So some scientists think the animals may use rivers or landmarks, kind of like maps, how we use maps to get to certain places. Maybe animals use those as kind of their road maps to get back to their homes. So some scientists think that animals use the stars and the sun to figure out where they're at. And then other scientists think maybe animals just use their senses. They use maybe their sense of smell to get back home, kind of like how dogs have really good senses of smell. Well, maybe a lot of different animals have really good senses of smell and they can just sniff their way back home. How do you think that animals migrate? So another question I have is what types of animals migrate? Is it just one, or is it just birds, or what types migrate? So this picture is showing me that there's all sorts of animals that migrate. There's whales, there's butterflies, there's birds, there's insects. So many different types of animals migrate. So that must mean there's a lot of different reasons to migrate, because not these animals probably are not migrating for the same reasons. And then another question I have is, I'm really interested about the animals in Georgia. So what animals in Georgia migrate? So these are a few examples, and I love sea turtles. If you've ever been to Tybee Island, it's shown here on the map in the bottom right-hand corner. And sea turtles come from the ocean to Tybee Island every year just so they can lay their eggs and reproduce and have babies. So they travel and swim thousands of miles to be able to do this. And then here we have some other animals that migrate in Georgia. We have bald eagles that migrate and other birds. My final question is, why do animals come back home after migrating? Why don't they just stay where they're at? So we're gonna watch this video, and then you guys are gonna get a chance to share out with some of your own questions. What things are you wondering about migration? Because I had a lot of questions.
Hi, it's Doug. If you're from North America, you probably recognize this. When I was growing up, these were the butterflies that always got the most attention. They're big, they're bright, they're orange. They're called monarchs. We only see them in the warm summer months, though. By winter, they were gone. Someone named Erin has a question about animals that fly to warm places in winter. Let's give her a call now.
Hi, Dad.
Hi, Erin.
I have a question for you. If animals find a warm place in the winter, why do they come back?
That's a great question. As it gets close to wintertime, monarch butterflies go south to spend the winter somewhere warm. And it's not just monarch butterflies that do this. Lots of other animals do too, like a lot of different kinds of birds, even a few different kinds of whales. They'll actually swim south, leaving places like Canada and the United States and heading down to warmer places. Places like this, Mexico, where it's nice and warm even during the winter months. Then, in spring, when the weather warms up back north, all of these animals head back again. This whole process, going back and forth like this once each year, it's called migration. But now here's the thing, a warm place like Mexico, it's actually warm there all year. So what's the point of ever going back north? Why not just stay in the places that are warm year-round? Keep in mind, too, it's a lot of work for an animal to migrate. It's not like they can hop on an airplane.
I'm going to pause the video for a second and think, that is a long way to go. That piece of land right there is all of North America. America is in there, Mexico is in there, and Canada is in there. So animals are traveling thousands of miles to get to warmer places.
And to get there, to go from Canada or the United States to Mexico can be as much as 3,000 miles. Imagine having wings and having to flap your wings constantly that far. What do you think? Why don't migrating animals just stay where it's warm? Now would be a good time to pause the video and discuss.
This was my question earlier.
Well, you can look for clues by noticing what some of these animals do after they get back from their winter trip. For example, when monarch butterflies return to the United States and Canada, they start to lay eggs on the leaves of plants. But not just any plant. They only lay their eggs on the leaves of this plant. It's a plant called milkweed. It turns out lots of milkweed grows in Canada and the US during summer. And milkweed is the only kind of plant that monarch caterpillars will eat. If monarch butterflies don't lay their eggs on milkweed, then when the caterpillars hatch, they'll actually starve. So you see, monarch butterflies come back north because their caterpillars need a certain kind of plant that grows in the north. Or here's another good example. This bird is called a purple martin. It spends its winter down in the warm countries of Central and South America. But then in the springtime, it flies back north each year, just in time for when lots of insects start to hatch. Purple martins love to eat flies, mayflies, any kind of insect. If the birds had stayed down in Central and South America, they'd miss out on all that food. So you see, one reason animals don't stay in warm places has to do with finding certain kinds of food that they need. But these aren't even the only reasons that some animals migrate. Check out this video. It's hard to believe what you're seeing, but those are fish literally swimming across the road to get to the other side. It's a flooded road. These fish are called salmon, and they do this every year. Salmon spend their adult lives out in the ocean, but every year, once each year, they migrate, not south to stay warm, but instead inland, up into rivers. They actually have to wiggle their bodies constantly in order to swim upstream. It's incredibly hard work. They're so determined, they swim so hard, they'll even jump up over waterfalls if they need to. Why would they work so hard just to migrate up a river? Well, their goal is to reach calm, shallow pools of water high up in the mountains, where they lay their eggs. It turns out when baby salmon hatch in these shallow pools, they're much less likely to get washed away or eaten by predators than if the eggs had been laid in the ocean. So in summary, lots of animals travel long distances, back and forth once each year. It's what we call migration. Even though
Notice again, I'll repeat what he just said. Once a year. Only once they have to take this trip. So it happens every single year. They go back and forth once a year.
Migration is a lot of hard work and can even be dangerous for the animals that do it. It's worth it to them in order to meet their needs or the needs of their babies. That's all for this week's question. Thanks, Aaron, for asking it. Now, for the next episode.
So I had a lot of questions, and I'm sure you have several too. So in our Google form, you are going to get the opportunity to answer some questions about migration. What is it? Who does it? What types of animals do it? And you're going to be able to tell us what you're wondering. I'm so excited to figure out what you're wondering about this because I had so many questions, and I'm certain that I didn't get to all the questions.